there's no money education from schools.
That's another thing, because,
and I would say it's on purpose, to be honest.
Yes. If somebody sanctions you or freezes your money, you're gonna freeze everything. Every reserve currency lasted an average of 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
We are currently on year number 100 or so.
No.
For the US dollar. They can say, okay, this money, you can only buy this much meat per week. Otherwise, we will not let you pay anymore. We will not let you travel more than a certain amount of kilometers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because of a climate crisis. So Bitcoin is a public decentralized payments network.
Mm-hmm.
When you say that to people, you completely lose them immediately, right? They don't know what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So, and this is why most people are scared of it, scared to get into it. I have talked with people who are 35 years old, and they say, I'm too old to understand this. I'm like, what? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this sentence that I just said. Bitcoin is a public decentralized payments network.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to break it down into 3 parts, okay? Just like Lego blocks. And I'm going to explain each part, and by the time I'm done, you're going to understand why it has value. Yeah, so
okay,
let's take the words public and decentralized, mm-hmm. and put them on the side for now. Ignore them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go with payments network. What is a network? It's a bunch of interconnected computers that can exchange things with each other. So for example, if I send you an email, because the internet is a network,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So I can send you an email. I'm basically sending you data.
Yes.
Right? And you can send and receive data between computers.
Mm-hmm.
So when we say that Bitcoin is a payments network, we are saying that we have a bunch of computers that can exchange money
mm-hmm.
and value between each other.
Yeah.
I can basically send money to anyone in the world on this network at no extra cost. So for example...
Because it's not through the bank.
Exactly, there's no one in the middle, right? So...
So people who are in it can exchange money among themselves. Like in terms of crypto, right? Because you said 5% of people are using it. So...
I can send money from the UK
mm-hmm.
to someone in Southeast Asia or in Africa at no extra cost. Mm-hmm. I can send them $1 million and pay only like $10 fee.
Wow.
At most. Like if you had to do that through a bank, if you had to wire someone $1 million, right? You will get probably a 3% fee, which for $1 million is a lot. Right?
Oh yeah, oh my god.
Yeah, so I can also buy someone a drink from halfway across the world. All I need to know is the barman's Bitcoin address. I don't need to know who he is. I don't need to know his face. I don't need to put my phone number in my digital payments app.
So it's
his phone number in my digital payments app.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to add him. I don't need to know anything about him, right?
And this is where the problem is. I mean, the problem from people who want to control the world, or you know what I mean? Like,
exactly. We'll get to that. That's an interesting part, right?
Because it started making sense in my head. Like, this is exactly what whoever they are, they don't want us, like,
exactly
to have, because you don't know who, when, and how much.
Exactly. So look, I just explained what a payments network is, and you're already thinking banks are useless now. Yeah. So you're basically, what you're doing is you're emailing people, because this is a payments network. You're texting people money.
Yeah.
That means people who have a hard time accessing a bank, like people in like third world countries,
mm-hmm.
they don't need this anymore. They just can use Bitcoin. Right?
Yeah.
Now, let's take another part of the description from
mm-hmm.
the shelf, public, right? This is the most important one. And this is the part that people take mostly for granted. Incredibly for granted. So the internet is a public network.
Yes.
You cannot censor the internet. You cannot stop the internet. You can censor things that are built on top of it, like mm-hmm. Facebook or like Google. But those are built on top of the internet. If you don't like Facebook, you can just go use Twitter. if you don't like either of them, you can build something of your own, right?
And you are able to do it. So like, you're basically free there.
Yeah. So it's a public space. So Bitcoin, the Bitcoin network, is public infrastructure as well. So that means it's all inclusive. It cannot censor you. It cannot stop you from opening an account because it's not run by people.
Who runs it?
Nobody runs it. It's just like, it's made up of the same thing. Since it's a network, it's just like the internet.
Oh, right. So it's like a system.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need.
Yeah, it runs itself. It runs itself. Right? And.
Okay. It's making me clear. Yeah.
Yeah. And more importantly, to open an account, it doesn't need to ask you these useless questions like, where do you live? What's your gender? What's your phone number? What's your mom's name? What's your dad's name?
What's your pet's name? First pet?
Maybe not that, but...
Well, my bank... Oh, okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah, of course. You would be surprised. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. Where did you live before you lived here? What are your last 2 addresses? No. You can open a Bitcoin address within 3 minutes. And more importantly, you do not need to deposit money to open an account, unlike in a bank.
I think I'm gonna do that.
Yeah.
Go on.
Even more importantly, it cannot freeze your money. It cannot sanction you.
Cancel you in a way. Like I know quite a few people who, if they don't agree with like a certain, I don't know, political situation or anything like that, their bank accounts are frozen.
No, this is reality. This is reality in third world countries.
And I'm not gonna say who or whatever, but like I couldn't believe it until like my friends of a friend like actually had that experience. Like he was like basically he couldn't access his money in the bank like all of a sudden out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I was just like, what?
I believe this was a thing in Canada as well, which is not a third world country. Yeah. And when there were protests, the prime minister, I believe, was freezing people's bank accounts. It's basically weaponizing currency, which is why the Bitcoin network exists in the first place. And this is when people start to realize, oh, that's why it's valuable. Oh, shit. Yeah. More importantly, it cannot use your money to finance other people's loans and mortgages.
Right.
Yeah.
But how can you make sure that this doesn't happen?
Well, you can query the blockchain, and you always know how much money you have on hand, right? Now, with Bitcoin, there's no such thing as physical money. Okay, it's digital money. And I think a lot of people struggle to grasp the concept that they have digital money. But the thing is, and the thing that they don't know, is that what they have in the bank, that is also digital money, and it's not real. That is just credit.
If every person, that was something interesting I've seen recently, if every person on the planet right now goes to the bank and says, I want my money, nobody's going to get it. Like
that's a bank run. Yeah.
It's not possible.
Yeah, exactly. Because the bank is always lending that money out. It's called fractional reserve banking. It keeps maybe 10% of your money, lends out the other 90% to another bank, and that bank does the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And so you end up with a situation where you have, and this is real, only 3% of the money in the world is real. The other 97% is imaginary credit. So basically, when you are buying Bitcoin with money, well, with cash, you are basically turning fictional money into real money. That's the irony. You're converting, and this is why, for example...
Yeah, that is the irony.
This is why some banks will prohibit you from buying Bitcoin, because it's not because for your financial protection, it's because for our financial protection, right?
So there are banks that they don't allow you to buy.
They don't allow you.
So Yeah, wow.
But you can get around it pretty easily. Like if you top up your Revolut card with the bank and then buy the Bitcoin with your Revolut card, you still kind of did it, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So you just use prepaid cards in that case. So that's that's public. That makes Bitcoin the first bank and the only bank that is not a private company or a business.
Yeah.
We call it a bank in cyberspace because it uses digital money.
You said it's now $30,000, but like the Bitcoin.
Yeah, now it's $30,000.
But like for one?
For one Bitcoin, yes.
Okay. Bloody hell. Can I buy like points?
Of course. No, of course. And we're going to see why you can buy just a bit. Most people cannot afford an entire Bitcoin, right? So Bitcoin, before I explain the last part of this, it's divisible by 8 decimal places.
Okay.
So you can have 0.000 up to 8, one, I guess, when you say Bitcoin, that's equivalent of saying, I guess, $1, but then you have cents, right? Mm-hmm. Or you have pence, if you have British pounds. So the smaller denomination of Bitcoin is called a Satoshi. It's a very funny name, but it's named after the creator. Well, that's a fake name. He's not really Satoshi, but they're called Satoshis. And one Bitcoin is equal to 100 million Satoshis.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you have 0.1 of a Bitcoin, that's 10 million Satoshis.
Right. If you mentioned like bartender, like you can buy somebody drink if you know the bartender's like, Bitcoin address or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah. So, how does that work? Is it like PayPal? You have like email address, or like what address are we talking about?
Oh,
like,
so the Bitcoin address is equivalent to what you would call in the real world an account number.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Or the card on your debit card. Sorry, the number on your debit card. Yeah. So if you know that, you can wire someone money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's all you need, basically. Or sometimes it comes in the form of a QR code, so you just scan it, right? If you're like face to face with people, you scan their QR code, and that QR code gets translated into we call it the public key. Mm-hmm. The public key, right? There are 2 keys. The public key is the one that you use to send and receive value to another person. And then there's the private key. That's the one you keep to yourself, because that's like the PIN number, right?
Okay.
When you have access to the private keys, whoever has access to the keys has access to the Bitcoin. So
if I now like wanna buy some Bitcoin and use this and exchange money with you and with other of my friends, especially on Instagram, I see a lot of my friends are in it. So where do I go? What do I do? Where
to buy
is it a website? Yeah.
Oh right. Okay.
Or
well, you can send it to other people in a variety of ways.
Because I think that's what confuses people, because they don't know where to go or like how to like.
Because there's so many ways. It's not like you don't need a bank, right? Mm-hmm. So there's infinite ways you can do this. I mean, people in third world countries actually they do it by SMS.
Okay.
Right? Now, for example, one way that you can do it now, the Telegram.
Mm-hmm. I heard
they integrated the Bitcoin payment system. So, for example, you can send somebody through chat Bitcoin checks. And all they need to do is click them and download them. And then the Bitcoin gets transferred from one party to another.
Mm.
Yeah.
Where do you see your balance of Bitcoin?
Yeah, so for that you use a wallet. This is just like a wallet in the real world. But
I like how you say it, like real world.
In the fiat system, right? But now the thing is, the wallet, even in the real world, right? The wallet doesn't hold your Bitcoin. It doesn't hold your crypto.
Yeah.
It shows you how much crypto you have on the blockchain, right?
Wow, that's the.
So what it does, it basically just a lookup on the blockchain. It queries the blockchain to find your balance, right? And for this, to access a wallet, you need the private keys. I need to explain the last part of the description. That's decentralized. Okay, now what decentralized is, we know what a centralized thing is. It's basically a system that has a single point of failure. So for example, if Facebook servers go down, you will know because you won't be able to use it. And if you're in a corporate office, people will let you know probably. Because everybody uses it and everybody will find out immediately, right? A bank has a central point of failure. If a bank gets hacked or a bank gets robbed, you will probably lose your money, right? And if you happen to have just little money, insurance will probably cover you. But if you're rich and you have a lot of money in the bank, that's why good practice is to keep your money in different banks, because if one goes down, right, you still have the others.
Or investing, like into real estate and having like the actual assets. Instead of just like having millions and millions.
Yeah, that's true. But if somebody sanctions you or freezes your money, they're gonna freeze everything. They're not gonna care how many applications.
Russians oligarchs.
Yeah. Exactly.
My. I couldn't believe what was happening.
Exactly. So when you have a decentralized system, if some of those nodes, which are computers in the network, go down, there are always other computers ready to take their place, right? So, for example, are you familiar with the mythological creature, the Hydra, the one that has 3 heads?
I think I've seen it, but I don't know.
Have you watched Hercules, Disney Hercules?
Oh, yeah.
The purple monster with the 3 heads. Once you chop a head, 2 more will grow out of the same neck.
Right.
Right?
I remember, yeah.
That's a decentralized network. That's Bitcoin.
So you cannot kill it.
You can only kill it if you manage to take down all the nodes at the same time. Right. And there are thousands of nodes in the world, widespread. You don't know where they are, because it could be anybody. Because
it doesn't collect your information, right?
Yeah.
As you said, like there's no phone number and stuff like that you have to input.
Yeah, someone actually managed to run Bitcoin on their Nintendo Switch. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Like, good luck finding that device.
You said, like, we're gonna talk about, like, what is money?
What is money?
Or you want to explain what is actually in the real world?
Yeah. So, I think this generation, and I guess not just this generation, but this century in general, the most important question that people need to answer for themselves is, what is money? And I think that people have lost touch with what it is.
Or there's no money education from schools.
That's another thing. Because,
and I would say it's on purpose, to be honest.
Yes, it is. Because those schools are state funded. So if they're state funded, they can control the curriculum. They can make certain information inaccessible. So basically, everyone who's doing like a BSc in economics is coming out with like false impressions of what is money. But that's okay, you graduated, now you're in debt. You have to pay your degree, right? Yeah, and the dangerous part is that some of those people go on to become politicians. So they take this information, and then they spread it out to the public, and you know what happens. The public they don't know anything about finances. Most people don't know anything about money. So they end up believing what the other person says. And then you have a society which is completely financially uneducated. Yeah.
Which works for the system.
Yeah,
you can say.
Exactly. So there are 2 types of money. And one of them is we call it sound money. And the other one is unsound money. Now, the soundness of money, when we say sound money, we mean that money retains its value over time. It means whatever buying power you have now, you can be confident that you're going to have the same buying power in the future.
Okay.
Right? So a good example of sound money is gold. Gold.
It's always valuable, and basically it's growing.
It's always valuable, and what the banks doesn't tell you is that the central banks, they trust gold more than they trust the government issued money, because they keep gold in their reserves, right? And they wouldn't let it go, right? And in times of crisis, people turn to sound money. They turn to gold. They turn to silver. Silver is less sound than gold because it's less rare. Gold is the most precious metal in the world, right?
For thousands of years.
For thousands of years, and it once started. Today, it costs $2,000 for an ounce of gold, and it used to cost like $40.
Yeah.
That's not because gold became more valuable over time. I mean, for the average person, that's how they see it. But that's because the dollar collapsed against the value of gold.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, when you say gold is $2,000, what you're really saying is gold is 2,000 times stronger than the US dollar.
Right.
Right? Now, when we say Bitcoin is $30,000, what are we saying?
It's stronger.
30,000 times stronger than the US dollar. And that means it's also 15 times stronger than gold.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. An even more beautiful way to say it is that the dollar is 30,000 times weaker than Bitcoin.
It's beautiful. Is US dollar the strongest currency in the world?
It is the reserve currency.
And is it going to change with the, like...
That's what we're hoping for.
Okay. Because I had a conversation with a friend, because again, like, I'm not into this, so I don't dig deep, but people talk to me about stuff. He said something like, is it Turkey and China or something like that they will stop buying something in dollars,
of course.
Meaning the dollar is actually going to go down, or because right now, like, it's the strongest, like, it's like, reserve. Yeah. But if these big countries stop actually buying dollar,
it will definitely weaken. And the reason they do that is because the dollar is weaponized a lot against other countries. So you get, I mean, if there's a risk that your people are going to starve because you're using a dollar system, then what would you do as a world leader? But right, especially if you want to stay elected, you would go off it.
Yeah.
And the fun fact is that every reserve currency has lasted more or less an average of 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
So before the dollar, there was the British pound, which was the reserve currency that lasted about 115.
It was like the British Empire.
Yeah, during the British Empire. Yeah. Then you had the American Revolution, and then you had World War I.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, you had the dollar become the reserve currency, right? And back then it was great because the dollar was backed by gold.
Mm-hmm.
But then in 1970, Richard Nixon, which was the president at the time, he took the dollar off the gold, which was the biggest mistake in human history, right? Because...
Why did he do it?
Because, I don't know, it's like...
We need to Google this.
Yeah. The French wanted their gold, so they were asking America back to give the gold back. And I guess that incited some panic because America saw that as an attack on the dollar, right?
Okay.
And for some reason he thought that was a good idea. Every reserve currency lasted an average of 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
We are currently on year number 100 or so.
No.
For the US dollar.
The hell?
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think is going to be next currency?
Hopefully it will be Bitcoin.
Of course.
Of course.
But is it like realistic in the near future, let's say?
That's a hard question.
Yeah.
I think there will be a lot of resistance because if you're the dominant, let's say, empire in the world, and you're the biggest fear, like currency, money is the one thing that societies are built on, right? So every change is usually going to be very painful. So we don't know. It needs to be done right. But it's like surgically operating on the world, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's gonna be some pain, and because this is basically what you're doing this is a transfer of wealth. And going back on topic, unsound money is money that loses value over time. So the buying power that you will have in 30 years is not the same as the buying power you have now. My parents used to say, "Oh, we bought this house for 100,000 pounds." Today, if you want to buy a house in London, you're going to need a lot more than 100,000 pounds because the buying power went down quite significantly.
Mm-hmm.
The dollar, since 1913, has lost 97% of its value. People don't realize that because they say, okay, $1 is still $1. Okay, fine, but what can you buy with $1 today versus what could you buy with $1 back in 1913? Right?
Yeah.
Whereas Bitcoin had the opposite effect. You could buy 2 pizzas with 10,000 Bitcoin in 2010 when it was first discovered.
Mm-hmm.
And today, you can buy a house with just 10 Bitcoin.
Yeah,
right?
because it's stronger.
Yeah.
Is this... Because I said Bitcoin doesn't want your data, basically, and doesn't need it.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else does. So the bank, like any website, any service that you go for, they want to know as much as, and cashless. So they want to know what you bought, when, for how much, how often you go to buy this, where you're traveling.
Yeah.
So why they want to know all that? To control us and to just be like...
That's the only reason I can think of.
Me too.
So, for example, if you want to... I think there is some bank in Brazil that tracks what you buy. And I don't remember the name of the bank. But basically, it tracks what you buy and then calculates the carbon footprint of everything that you buy. So, for example, if you buy too much meat, it will send you a notification saying you might want to cut down on your consumption of meat because it harms the environment or something. Like that's what? Like that's an invasion of privacy, first of all, right? You could do that with flights as well. If somebody travels a lot, right? You're gonna tell them I mean, there's this idea now of countries developing their own digital currency.
Okay.
But the difference between that and Bitcoin is that the digital currency is controlled by the central bank. It is centralized, right? So basically, they can say, okay, this money, you can only buy this much meat per week. Otherwise, we will not let you pay anymore. We will not let you travel more than a certain amount of kilometers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because of a climate crisis.
I'm glad we went to this because it's very much and very closely related. The climate, change, the climate crisis. Even if, I cannot not see the connection there. So, is it hiding behind, pretending that we're doing this because we want to help the planet, but it's actually bullshit?
I do believe it's bullshit, yeah.
And put it's just...
I mean, we have a climate problem, but we don't have a crisis.
Yeah, but everybody who talks about the climate issues goes to those conferences with on private jets and use private jets 24/7 and then they fucking lecture people on don't eat steaks because you're gonna kill the planet. It's fucking
it's hypocritical. It's hypocritical. Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna say it's not good to install more initiatives that make the world a bit more green.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not harming anyone, you're just preventing something. You're giving the world a bit more longevity.
Mm-hmm.
But
and like I want fresh air, like I don't want pollution that much.
Yeah.
Like
but not to the extent that you're controlling people and telling them how to live.
Yeah.
Because that creates a bigger problem. Yeah.
Do you think cash will completely disappear? Because it seems like, is it good? Can we, like, should we just go to Bitcoin or?
Yeah.
Because like, I think they're pushing it very hard.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously the pandemic helped to push this even more because you couldn't pay cash.
Yeah.
So this was amazing for them. And now it still kind of continues. So a lot of shops just refuse to take your money. Then, I mean, it's money. Like, why do you want to, you don't want to take my money in cash?
It's real money. It's the only real money left in the fiat system. Yeah.
And they tell me you can't pay cash. So I'm like, okay, you don't want my money? Fine. So you think it's going to disappear? I think it's going to disappear.
Slowly it's going to be phased out. It's a shame because, I mean, this is like if you had to bypass these kind of restrictions, like you can't buy this much meat or whatever, mm-hmm. you would use cash, right?
Yeah, exactly, because they don't know.
Exactly. Cash is not trackable. Yeah, I do think it will phase out. We're going into a world now where we're using digital currency a lot. The question is, which digital currency are you going to use, and are you going to use the one that's dishonest? I mean, or are you going to use the one that's based on mathematical proof and has no restrictions, isn't run by anyone, completely democratic? So the thing is, when we explain the difference between sound money and unsound money, money that loses value versus money that holds its value over time, have you ever heard the expression, money makes the world go round?
Yes.
Yeah. You've also heard the expression, money is the root of all evil,
mm-hmm.
right?
Oh yeah, these are...
And those statements are both true. But money is the root of all evil is inaccurate. Unsound money is the root of all evil.
Yeah.
Because when... We'll talk about the Roman Empire in a bit. Money makes the world go round is also inaccurate. What you're meant to say is sound money makes the world go round, right?
Yeah. So it's not money like money.
Yeah. So when the world was on sound money, we had some of the most prosperous times in human history. In the 19th century.
That's true.
We also had the Renaissance period. It was a time where everybody was using gold. Mm-hmm. And we had some of the greatest art and literature that the world has ever produced, which was Michelangelo, Picasso, right?
Architecture as well.
Yeah, we had the city of Florence is a very good example of that. When you go there, you see the architecture. Yeah. This is what humans are capable of, right? But when it was on sound money, which was on fiat, you see these houses that look exactly like each other, no thought whatsoever. We just focus on getting as much people in there as possible, mm-hmm. because it's easy money, right?
Why spend on going extra miles so it actually looks beautiful?
Exactly.
Like if you go to Barcelona and Gaudi and like, oh my god, that city is absolutely mind-blowing. We look at now and mm-hmm. the problem is, of course, we're not going to destroy Barcelona, but not now, maybe in the future. But a lot of beautiful buildings, they are destroyed, and then like a shopping center with like just glass windows is like built, and I'm just like, really? Like, is it really the way we're gonna go? And like the apartments and all that stuff, it just looks the same, and it's very much like 1984 or like The Fifth Element, the film, like all those films that we consider like, oh my god, it's a sci-fi. I'm like no, it's not. Like I'm scared.
Yeah. So for example, the Roman Empire, right, when it was using sound money, it was at its best. Mm-hmm. That was the best years of the Roman Empire. But then, back then, they didn't have a printing press, so you couldn't print money. You couldn't inflate the currency, right?
Right.
So the way you would make your currency less valuable was they used to take the coins, and back then silver was the best money, right? And they used to remove some of the silver content from the coins and replace it with some other useless metal, right? So they'll have more silver and they'll be able to produce more coins, right? That's when the collapse of the Roman Empire started. Society depends on good money to survive, and this is what happens, is that the Roman Empire eventually collapsed and was replaced by some other empire. I think it was the Byzantines. So it's very crucial for society to operate on sound money. Now we'll talk about inflation. Inflation is a very big thing because this is how you debase the currency. You weaken the currency, you weaken its value and its buying power. So when you print money, you're taking the currency and you're weakening its value. People don't usually notice when this happens because this happens in the central bank, right? But prices go up.
Everybody notice.
And people express this as, they say the cost of living goes up, right? But what happened in reality is that your wealth is now worth less than it was yesterday.
I'd like to believe it's not that easy to control the world fully, because there's always people who are not going to go for it. And you cannot do it with 50% of human population when 50% is against it, for example.
The best way, and this is why I said in the beginning of the podcast, I said once I was on the other side, I felt optimism, I felt angry about some things. The advice I would say is study Bitcoin. I would recommend people read the book, The Bitcoin Standard. It will explain things much better than I ever can. It's the best book in my opinion.
I'll put it in the...
It will tell you about the history of money, and then it goes on to talk about why Bitcoin basically fixes the flaws of unsound money, why it's valuable, how it perfects all the properties of money. And I would also recommend people to read another book called Bitcoin, The Future of Money. That one talks about the history of Bitcoin, where it came from, all the possibilities that Bitcoin, that we can do with Bitcoin as a society and with other cryptocurrencies as well. To read the Bitcoin white paper, which is why Bitcoin was created and the problem that it solves. I believe you can find this on your MacBook as well, because somebody put it there. It's like a new discovery this year. Someone just hid it on every person's laptop. So if you Google how to find the Bitcoin white paper on my machine, on my MacBook.
Oh my god, I'm going to try this after,
And the fourth thing is, this is very important. You can go to a website called hardmoneyfilm.com and watch the 30-minute film that's on the website.
I'll do
Put that as a link as well.
Yes, I will. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.